Yug, scratching his head, asks Abhimanyu, "She didn't do anything to me, right?" Abhimanyu looks confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean that maybe last night the Yakshini didn't do that thing with you." "What thing?" "The thing that a husband and wife do at night," Abhimanyu says teasingly. "Look at your shirt. The buttons were open and there were scratch marks on your chest." Yug frowns at him. "Are you crazy, Abhimanyu? What nonsense are you talking about? Try to speak something sensible sometimes." Abhimanyu looks away, embarrassed. "I'm only saying what your condition made me think. Just a while ago, you said the Yakshini never leaves the graveyard mansion, right? You even checked that with your infrared thermometer last night." "Yes," Yug replies. "If she was inside that mansion last night, how could she be with me here? Because I used my device after I came to your place." "Maybe she came back with you," Abhimanyu murmurs. Then, in a serious tone, he adds, "Because last night wasn't a full moon or new moon. Yakshinis hunt men only on those nights. Maybe she just did that with you, but didn't make you her prey yet." Yug laughs. "You've lost it, man. What's wrong with your head these days? That's like saying Yakshinis don't eat chicken on Tuesdays." Abhimanyu tries to speak again, but Yug interrupts him, still laughing. "Anyway, I don't believe you. The girl I met last night, she was too beautiful to be a Yakshini." Abhimanyu whispers, "Beautiful women are the ones who are Yakshinis." "What did you say?" Yug asks sharply. "Nothing." Abhimanyu sighs sadly. Seeing Yug's uneasy expression, Abhimanyu tries to calm him. "Look, I'm not saying you're completely wrong. Anything is possible." "So what should we do?" "What do you mean? What should we do? Who's the paranormal expert here, you or me?" "Oh, right, it's me," Abhimanyu says sheepishly. "Don't forget it, buddy. We only have 4 days left. 4 days later, it'll be a full moon. If we don't find the Yakshini before that, things will go very wrong." Abhimanyu thinks for a moment. "I have an idea, but we'll have to do it at night." "Then let's start tonight," Yug agrees. As they're talking, they suddenly hear the sound of the door shaking. When they look toward it, their hearts skip a beat. Standing there are Kair and Kachwa. Both Yug and Abhimanyu panic, wondering if the two had overheard their conversation. Abhimanyu quickly comes up with an excuse. "Hey Kachwa, do you ever see anything other than your drink? We were just discussing Yug's startup plan. Couldn't do it last night, so we're doing it now. We've got to start work soon." "Oh, I see," Kachwa says slowly. "I thought you were talking about some kind of event." Abhimanyu cuts him off. "No events tonight. We have important work to do, remember?" "Got it." Kachwa nods, looking down. Then he glances at Yug and says, "By the way, Yug, how did you faint last night? And what happened between you and your uncle that made you cross the river in the middle of the night to come here?" Before Yug can answer, his phone starts ringing. Kachwa chuckles. "There it is. Queen Bindu calling her Prince Yug. Come on, man, pick up. What are you waiting for? A lucky moment." "Fine, I'm picking it up. Now shut up for a minute." Yug answers. "Yes, Bindu." "Okay, I'm coming." "Yes." Directly to the shop. He hangs up. Kair asks, "What happened? What did she say?" "She said the gas cylinder at the shop is empty. I just need to go get it refilled." Kair gets up. "Come on, Kachua, you're coming too." "Me? But Bindu only called you." "Yeah, but someone has to hold the cylinder on the bike. Do you think Bindu can lift it herself?" "Bindu the delicate one, huh? Fine, I'm coming, but you're buying me breakfast on the way." "Deal." Abhimanyu suddenly says, "Wait, take me along too. I've got something to do." Yug looks surprised. "You too?" "Yeah, but don't worry, I'll be back tonight." "Alright, just don't be late." "I won't." Kair, Kachwa, and Abhimanyu leave the graveyard mansion. Yug locks the door behind them and goes to his room to freshen up. Meanwhile, Amodita walks nervously toward the mansion. Her legs tremble, but her desire to meet Yug pulls her closer. Talking to herself, she says, "So what if she's a Yakshini? I'm a Sadhayin. Mother gave me a mantra to protect myself. I'm not afraid. I'll do whatever it takes to win Yug. He belongs to me, only me." Murmuring this over and over, she reaches the mansion. The door is closed. She knocks. "Yugji, Yugji, it's me. Amodita, I brought your phone. Are you inside?" No answer. She knocks again. "Please open the door." But Yug, being in the bathroom, doesn't hear her. Amodita begins to worry. Why isn't he answering? Is he even inside? Did he leave because of the Yakshini? Or did the Yakshini do something to him? A thousand fearful thoughts fill her mind. Suddenly, she hears the latch click open. She whispers, "He must have heard me and recognized my voice." She gently pushes the door. It creaks open. She freezes. The hall is empty. No one is there. How did it open by itself? She wonders. Maybe it wasn't locked properly. I'm just imagining things. Trying to calm herself, she steps inside and calls again. Yukji, where are you? Silence. The whole mansion feels eerily still. Her fear grows stronger. Then from upstairs, she hears the sound of something falling. Yukji must be in the upper room, she thinks, and starts climbing the stairs. Yukji, why aren't you saying anything? She calls as she walks up. When she reaches the door marked Room 666, she stops. Another crash echoes. She flinches and instinctively steps back. The door next to Room 666 is open. Panicking, she rushes inside and starts breathing heavily. Inside the room, she notices a shirt and trousers on the bed with a suitcase beside it. These must be Yukji's, she says to herself. Maybe I can find one of his hairs in his clothes. She reaches out to lift the shirt, but suddenly feels as if someone grabs her hand from behind. She tries to move, but her arm won't go forward. What's happening to me? Why can't I move my hand? She struggles, but it's no use. A cold fear grips her heart. Is this the Yakshini's doing? Yes, it must be, but I'm not afraid of you. Yukji is mine and no one can take him from me. You think I fear you? No, I'm a Sadhayin. Do you hear me? Amodita opens her fist, revealing 5 mustard seeds in her palm, and begins reciting the mantra her mother had taught her. Om Hem Him Shrim Him Hum Ha Hum Namo Bhagavate Mahabal Parakramaye Bhoot Pret Pishach Shakini Dakini Yakshini Patanmari Mahamari Yaksha Rakshas Bhairav Betal Graha Rakshas Shaktikam Khaden Han Bhajan Bhajan. Then she stops. What was next? Why can't I remember? Someone squeezes her hand tighter. She struggles to recall the rest. Why can't I remember the next part? Come on, remember. But before she can finish, an invisible force pushes her down. She tries to move her arms and legs, but she can't. What's happening to me? Why can't I get up? Then she feels something, a touch, cold, unfamiliar, gliding over her body. She gasps. What are you doing to me, Yakshini? I'm not a man, I'm a woman. You only go after men. What are you doing? But the unseen hands keep caressing her skin, pressing, touching, making her tremble in horror. She can't believe her eyes. Could a Yakshini really do this to another woman? Terrified, Amodita whispers, This is it. She's going to kill me too. And in the silence of that haunted mansion, an ancient voice echoes. For centuries, the Yakshini story has lived on. She is fire. She is the dream you fear.